Good evening. Welcome to my speech about what needs to be done to improve the future of the video games industry. In my previous speech, I touched upon what's wrong with the video games industry, a lot of the key problems that's going on, a lot of the politics, a lot of the developing issues, and I'm going to expand upon that in this speech. There's a few key things I want to touch on, mostly the studios that develop these games, what we should do about it, the controversies they drum up, the identity politics, and some of the games that have suffered because of these policies that these developers have kind of put in place. My number one problem is lazy developers or developers that try to put out a game that purposefully drums up controversy in order to replace a good game with something that people will rush to defend because it's supportive of their ideologies. One game that comes to mind is Battlefield 5. I don't expect most of my audience here to know what Battlefield 5 is, but it's a first-person shooter World War II game that came out, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And I was excited. I wanted to play this game. I thought it was going to be fun, but then I watched the trailer, and there was a lot of weird stuff in the trailer. It's a World War II game, and there was a woman with a prosthetic metal arm that was running around, and it was really weird because it was very alternative history. Now, I don't mind alternative history, but this game was really being marketed to us as an authentic World War II experience, which you don't really get from a video game. It's all about atmosphere. It's not about the actual gameplay being super accurate to World War II, because that'd be boring. But a lot of people saw that as not really identity politics, but they kind of turned it into that because it was like, we don't want this person that doesn't fit in a World War II video game being shoved to the forefront, because they put this woman on the cover of their game, and the whole time she has one arm and she's fighting in World War II with a bolt action rifle, and it's like, why is she here? It feels like you're trying to push something on us. And basically what ended up happening is the studio said, if you don't like this woman, don't buy our game. You have no place. We don't want your money. And a lot of people said, okay, we won't give you our money. And that game, their pre-orders dropped 80%. They suffered a loss that year. They didn't make money on that game. And it was a shame because, a few months after the game came out, it was rocky when it launched. But a few months after it came out, the game was actually kind of fun. A lot of people, I've never played it, but I've heard a lot of people say they really enjoyed it. I didn't want to buy it on the principle of the developer told me not to. The developer said, if you don't want to play our game the way that we made it, then you can screw off. And that's not how I feel the games industry needs to be. The games industry really needs to be bowing to the player, the people that are spending $60 on these video games. These developers have become very entitled. They think that this game is their art, and they get to decide what we as gamers should enjoy. And it's not how an industry that's trying to sell you their artwork is going to survive. By not only insulting their player base, but by telling them what they want to play. Because I really did want to play an immersive World War II Battlefield game. I love Battlefield. It's one of my favorite franchises. But when my video games are being politicized, when people are trying to take my escapism, my video games where I sit down and I just have fun, and they bring their politics to me in something I'm paying for, that becomes my problem. I don't want to pay $60 for a pandering simulator where someone tells me someone gives me an alternative history that they believe is correct or is something that could happen. And then again, yes, the developer has every right to put this in their game, but I have every right not to buy this game. And that's kind of contradictory to what I said earlier, but what I'm trying to really convey is that developers need to put the consumer before themselves. The consumers are playing video games because they're fun, because they're an escape from their everyday monotonous life. You go to work, you get up, you brush your teeth, you go to work. But then you come home and you jump into a fantasy world. It could be space, it could be World War I, it could be the Civil War, it could be the 1400s, cavalry warfare, it could be anything. Because games are just, they take you to these magical places and you can just kind of live somebody else's life for a little bit, something that's a little more fantastical. And that's the whole point behind using games as an escapism. And again, me and millions of other people just want to escape to a universe without these politics being shoved in our throat. And that's very reflected in the success of Battlefield 5. Developers are also, not only are they trying to politicize their video games, they're using this politicization, if that's a word, I think it is, to drum up controversy. The controversy is used to generate clicks in articles and to draw more attention to their game, because in their eyes, negative attention is good attention. Any attention is good. They want more people to hear about their game. They want those that are in support of their cause to buy it, but that's usually not how it works. The people that are into these politics don't play video games. They don't generally find themselves supporting this media. Whereas the people that are paying $60, $70 every year for this media are being pushed aside for virtue signaling to show how progressive their video games are. And it's a slap in the face to players. But I would say a far bigger problem is just a lack of effort put forth by these developers. They're putting out games that are half-baked, that are not done, like I mentioned earlier with Call of Duty Vanguard. I'll bring up another game. When Fallout 76, which I mentioned in my last speech, launched, its day one patch was 50 gigabytes. For a little bit of scale, the PlayStation 4, when it launched, had a 500 gigabyte hard drive. Now, later models had 1 terabyte hard drives, but 50 gigabytes is taking up a massive portion of your hard drive. You have to delete games that are 50 gigabytes just to make space for this patch to play this game that is 100 gigabytes. And that's a problem. Is back in 2009, when I started playing games, when you bought a game, it was done. It was completed. There were no patches. They played these games to make sure they weren't going to break on you, that you'd be able to have fun. But nowadays, developers create a game over the course of 8 months to a year, maybe 2 months if they're lucky. And they put out a game that is not done, that is too ambitious for what they're capable of. And it takes them 2 to 3 years of patchwork and hundreds of gigabytes to get this game into a playable framework. And that's a problem, because what they'll end up doing is they'll create new problems, and they'll fix one problem and break 2 more. And that's what Fallout 76 was doing. That's what happened when Fallout 4 came out. They would create these games that are just lazy. They would focus on the graphics, the environments, and they wouldn't focus on the story elements of these games. And they would give you repetitive quests that were just not fun to play. And it's honestly just lazy. We, as consumers, need to be demanding more from these companies. You need to boycott games. You need to boycott developers. You need to get on your social media platforms and tell them, hey, stop. I just want to play your game. I don't want to be lectured to. I don't want my games that I love dearly to be politicized. I don't want this. And our best hope is that they can listen. They're either going to listen or they're going to go out of business. Bethesda, the maker of Fallout 76, they got bought out by Microsoft. They hemorrhaged money after Fallout 76 because it had such low sales. They were just giving the game away, hoping that people would come in and spend some money on their cosmetics. But we as consumers must demand more from those that make our games. And that's all that we can hope to achieve, is that one day we will pay $60 for a game and it will actually be worth $60 when we plop it in and play it for the first time. Thank you.